All right, let's talk about pop art. Pop art is a term that is first used in the 1950s in England, but pop art centers around Europe and the United States, really around the 1960s. This is the time when all of those baby boomers that were born after the end of World War II start to come of age. When you think of the 60s, you could think about generational conflict, about all kinds of issues like music and dress and drugs and involvement in Vietnam. So that's sort of the backdrop for this movement. When you think pop art, what you're talking about is popular culture, an embrace of popular culture, an examination of consumer culture and mass media. Also at this time, there's a broadening of art's definition away from those two main categories that we'd studied for so many centuries, that's being painting and sculpture. Now we're looking at new and sort of different media and even performance. And so our first image of pop art that you can see here on the left-hand side is one of these new sort of media in the modern world, and that is of collage. This is Richard Hamilton's Just What Is It That Makes Today's Home So Different and So Appealing? Richard Hamilton's work was from 1956, so it's an early pop example. It shows his interest in popular culture and even advertising. So here's what Hamilton, this artist, defined pop as. He said, quote, popular, transient, that means short term sort of solution, expendable, low cost, mass produced, young, witty, sexy, gimmicky, glamorous, and big business. This is so different from many of the past sort of when we think about expressionism, those German expressionists that were really reacting to the horrors of World War II, and they wanted us to sort of reassess our humanity and remember what makes us human, the sort of human experience. This is so different from that. It really is sort of assessing and looking at the world of popular culture. And so when we look at the work here, what we see is a pinup girl and a muscle man here. They inhabit a home filled with the latest consumer gadgets, the sort of the newest of the new. They have a TV, the sort of Hoover vacuum cleaner, a gramophone, even a packaged ham that's there. Seen as very witty and very clever. They even have a theater's marquee visible in the background and a newspaper. Shows us all of this sort of consumer culture and the sort of latest and greatest in society. This artist admired Duchamp, and there are many similarities between pop art and Dada. Some ways that they are similar is that they both push the envelope of what can be considered art. So here, this is a collage, little sort of pasted together scraps of paper to make this image. That really sort of pushes the way that we would define art, or how we would define art. Another way that's similar to Dada is using sort of ready-made images. In this case, Dada, we call them ready-mades. Here it's sort of collage, these sort of pieced together, bits from scraps from newspapers and general advertisements that are there, not traditional painting and sculpture. But pop is also different from Dada. Pop is oftentimes more humorous and a little more ironic. It's not really a critique of consumer culture, where Dada sort of shunned the modern world because the modern world led to war. Pop differentiates itself from Dada. It's not quite as critical, not sort of that same hardcore rejection of reason and progress. But think again how pop art, like Dada, was so different from, say, expressionism or the Fauves, all this interest in this creative impulse and color as expression. That's certainly not what we have here. Another pop artist is Roy Lichtenstein. I'm going to show you two of his works here. On the left-hand side, it's called I Know How You Must Feel, Brad, from 1963. And on the right side, Roy Lichtenstein's Live Ammo Bling. This is panel 2 of 4. The United States was a sort of a perfect environment for pop culture. So our last example was British, and this is a US example. The United States was a great environment for pop art because we had a very highly developed consumer culture, as we still do today. Roy Lichtenstein, the beginning of the 50s, took subjects from comic strips and also from commercial art, and he focused on melodramatic, as you can see on the left, and sometimes violent scenes, as you can see on the right. He put them into this sort of monumental size. He really immortalizes something that is supposed to be read and thrown away. It's sort of reads like a newspaper comic strip. And it even, if you zoom in on it, you can see how it breaks up into these little dots. They're called Ben-Day dots. And so they sort of coalesce as you move away from the image, almost like pointillism. But he takes this newspaper printing techniques of what called the Ben-Day dots, and he brings it into the realm of high art. And so we see something that is consumable, again, like a newspaper, read and thrown away, and it's moved into something that is now considered high art and high culture. So it's really sort of a blending of these two worlds, of popular culture and the realm of high art. Let's look at another artist from this time, and that would be Andy Warhol. You can't talk about pop art without Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol is really the quintessential American pop artist. He was a successful commercial artist and illustrator, and he used familiar consumer items like familiar faces of celebrities. And here, as you can see, consumable products. These are the Campbell soup cans, 200 soup cans from 1962. He said that he chose Campbell soup cans because he ate it as a child, and that was it. No judgment, just sort of an observation. And his preferred medium was a screen printing technique. Let's look at here on the right-hand side to see another work by Andy Warhol, and this is his Coca-Cola bottles. What he does with both of these images, the Campbell soup cans that you see there on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, is he sort of puts them in this repetition into sort of within a grid. And this helps to emphasize the sort of commodity status of these products, sort of like you would see them stacked up on a store shelf. Again, it's not really a positive or negative. You don't see them sort of, bleeding red or anything like that, but it's really for the viewer to decide. He sort of turns a mirror onto the consumer, sort of shows us sort of the abundance that we have in society today. So he's commenting on mass-produced products, showing us the abundance that is available in today's society. Of course, it sort of begs the question of, is a neutral stance really tenable? Really, can you be neutral? And is this really neutral? And if you're not taking a stand, does that amount to complicity with consumerism? Is he saying that it's okay? This becomes really the sort of stance of just sort of showing us what's in the world, becomes a little bit dicey when we consider how he doesn't stick with just cans of soup or bottles of Coke. He then moves to images of celebrity. And this is Marilyn Monroe, Diptych. It's a two-paneled painting. The year here is 1962. Marilyn Monroe is seen here as a consumer product. It's a publicity shot, sort of has these sort of garish colors here on the right-hand side. And instead of the sort of almost perfect silkscreen technique that he has here on the right-hand side, he takes Marilyn Monroe, the celebrity, and he has a more imperfect silk screening technique. The color is kind of imperfect here. He has many of these Marilyn Monroe images where the color kind of bleeds over the outline. And it sort of underscores the impersonal, kind of mechanical process by which images are made and the way that celebrity is made. So here we see sort of a nice juxtaposition with the Coke bottles on the right-hand side, that Marilyn Monroe is a commodity. She's something to be bought and sold, like soup or soda. So Marilyn Monroe is not really seen as a person. And this is the beginning of this idea of the sort of cult of celebrity. And we see that she is sort of bought and sold in the same way. Andy Warhol really sort of has us, in a way, contemplate our consumer culture and the way that products and people are bought and sold during our time now, particularly in this time in the 1960s as well.